It's good. That's where you are. So give me some time.
All right, we are going to go ahead and bring it back as a whole group. So let's wrap up the conversation. And I want to ask, is there anything, first of all, I want to ask, is there anything anyone wants to share out loud? Any big aha moment they had, or an interesting question, a finding, thought, theory? Yes.
On a higher order question, like a 2 or 3, it's not always the I'm sorry. Yeah, we're not looking at the content and that the teachers need the content to be taught. So they need to analyze the question, how to read the question and break it down.
Absolutely. So for especially a lot of these questions, you have to get actually into the test and looking at the test, looking at the question to kind of figure out which part of it and break it down. Absolutely. And I think that's a large part of it. So getting into the test itself is truly important. And that was a really good point. Yes.
For the diagnostics, you have the distractor analysis on there. Is there any way moving forward FSQs and USAs might be able to be equipped with that? Because that would be very useful.
Hey, if you don't ask, you never know, right? So the question was whether or not we could have a distractor analysis for the FSQs and USAs. I think Dr. McKeever over there just started coughing. You know what though? We can. It's something we could definitely look at. It's been mentioned. The only thing I would give me pause is this. I want to see what Governor DeSantis does with our assessment system. I would hate to put all of that in and then we have to rewrite all of them anyway. So let me pause on that one. Let's look at that. But that's an interesting question.
Take the district off the hook. That would be a very good activity for your teachers to do. Because they've given you an exemplar. I don't need a microphone. They have given you an exemplar. Now your teachers have to be able to do that, or else they will. Oh, sorry about that. They're recording. Let me give you my recording voice. They've already given you an example of how it works. Now it should be up to your teachers to be able to analyze. If they can't analyze and tell you why the answer is right or wrong in the distractors, they don't know the standards and they would not be an effective teacher. So I think at one point in time you have to gradually release. This would be the gradual release part. And for people who have PLCs or team meetings, this is a great opportunity because then it leads back to breaking down the standards and figuring out why it is. So I'm going to say, have your teachers do it. Carla paid me to say that, by the way. Yeah, she is. She's going to kill me.
You know what though? That's one I don't know if we can maybe bring in teachers or work with it because too, if your school has newer teachers, that would be a question, but that's one we can look at.
And I am a teacher, and some of those questions are, I don't know the distractors. The questions are very high level. And some
Yeah.
of them I know why the answer is B, but C looks really good. So if I could have a little help.
No, absolutely. So it's something that we could definitely look at. Like I said, the only thing would be if I would think about delving all of that time in and then given Governor DeSantis' order, if we completely redo the assessments, then we'd have to start all over again from scratch. So let me look at that. It's definitely an idea that we have heard before. So an interesting idea. Anybody else?
Yeah, Diana, we were talking about setting up our administration. We have a kind of a default setting that's changes every unit as it comes up, and so we want to take a look at different practices being implemented within the classroom. So we were talking about also that even though we're asking the teachers to be more question STEM, user friendly at this point in time, also taking a look at the level DOK that they're utilizing with those question stems and not just picking like it's a menu and saying, I'm just going to use these pieces, because we really need to ensure that the students are getting the 60 to 80% focus on those level 2s at this point in time.
Absolutely. Looking at those questions and focusing on those level 2s, but how many of you, I'm going to ask it to anybody, just look at the first 3 words and go, oh, it started with this word, so it must be a DOK too? No, you had to actually analyze the entire question. So I'm a big proponent of using question stabs and all those. It makes it easier for teachers. All good. And we have them posted on Blender. They're positive tools. But you still have to put the thought into it because you have to really analyze the full question. They're not foolproof, right? So that's really important to think all the way through on those. So here's some other things that I want to share that I heard going through. Looking at the question types. So there was one question that the 7th grade ELA was focusing on. It was question 3 on the 7th grade ELA. It was a drag and drop. And the students really struggled with it. It wasn't a standards issue because when they looked at that standard on FSQs and USAs, the students actually did fine with it. It was a drag and drop problem. But then when they actually looked further, that drag and drop was a multi-select drag and drop. So is the kid having a problem with drag and drop, or is the student having a problem with multi-select? Those are 2 different things. You have to dig deep. So again, the old days of going, oh, question 3 is standard 1.3, let's throw 1.3 on our secondary benchmark calendar, those days are gone. It's just way more complex than that. So practicing a drag and drop, that's a skill we definitely need to practice. If it's just that, the practice test that the DOE put out, that's on the slide that Mark went over with all the hyperlinks directly to it, those are great for that. If the students just need the skill of drag and drop, don't worry about content. Worry about just the skill of how do I drag and drop. Those practice tests are great for that. Those are hyperlinked directly to it. You have it on that slide that Mark showed. It's right there. Multi-select. Couple of things to figure out with this, and this is a big one. On the 7th and 8th grade test, they are computer-based. It will help the kids on the ELA for select. So, if it says choose 2 correct answers, or choose 3 correct answers, which it does on ELA. Notice carefully I said ELA, I did not say mathematics. I said ELA. On ELA, it will say choose the 2 answers or choose the 3 answers. If it says that, it will force the kids to only choose 2. So if the kid tries to choose 3, it doesn't allow them to do so on the FSA. On the 6th grade, which has now gone back to paper and is no longer a computer-based test, if it says choose 2, there is no longer a computerized system forcing the kids to choose 2, which means if the kid chooses 3, there's nothing to stop him from choosing 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. So, and our, teenagers, not the best listeners or great at following directions. So you really have to teach them, especially the 6th graders, look at the directions. It says choose 2, choose 2. And just 2, and only 2, and 2 means 2. Right? So focus in on that one. That's going to be a tricky one for 6th grade because it changes over to paper. All right, so there's a couple of things. But the point of this activity was how important it is to kind of delve deep in. All right, we have something else over at the table there.
Okay, what I noticed with my teachers, looking at item specs, there are several question styles for each standard. They're teaching only one, the multiple choice. The kids have to be exposed to all types during that instructional framework. Because if they're not exposed to all those question styles, for example, you might see a question stating what's equivalent to 4 to the 2nd power. If they're only teaching them 4 times 4, which is 16, and then there is 4 times 4 also on there as a multi-select question, the kids are only used to solving, just go straight to the answer. So they have to look at the item specs, look at the assessment limits, and also the question styles, and teach all those possible question styles. You can't wait to the end to do a gridded response when you know part of it might be a gridded response. So we have to make sure we look at our lesson plans and see exactly all the possible examples for that standard being taught in the classroom.
That's a great point. So for and I'm going to give you 2 different answers here. For mathematics, it's really important to focus in on those test item specifications. Know your assessment limits and know all the different ways each of those standards can be assessed and all those question types. It's incredibly important. You raise a really good point there because we need to make sure that students understand all of those pieces. For ELA, I'm going to summarize your test item specifications for you. Any item can be assessed in any way that the state feels like testing it. There you go. All of the questions can be assessed as any question type. It says it very clearly in the test item specifications that all of the question types can be assessed with any standard. So they're not limited. So it's not just like 1.3 can only be assessed with drag and drop and multiple choice and blah, blah. Yeah, any of them can be assessed with any of them, which means you have to be able to practice any of them with any of them. They have to know them. So those are great. That is an excellent point. You have to be able to have practice with all of them. All right, so some of these pieces here, a couple of ones that we just want to go over. Just to mirror some of the conversations that your teachers might want to have or that you might want to hear your teachers having in PLCs or that you might want to model for your teachers to have in PLCs. This is a really important one. So we're going to show you a Part A, Part B question for ELA. On the diagnostic, because of the way the system is set up, we broke up Part A and Part B into 2 separate questions. So this is from the 6th grade test. All right, this is item number 6. 65.9% of the students across our district scored this particular question correct. So you see here part A, you have your question, you have your distractor rationale at the bottom. C was correct. Yay, a lot of kids got it right. Yay, us. Then if you go to part B, which was question 7, we drop down to 17% of the students got it right. And it was, the question is, which sentence from the passage best supports your answer? So what is the answer? The kids got it. Now you actually have to provide us with the evidence to support your answer. I dropped down to 17% getting it correct. Here's why this is a big deal to you, okay? Because on the test, this is one question. 6 and 7 together, part A, part B is one question. We split it up for the purposes of the diagnostic because that's the way our testing system is set up, our platform. The state's platform is set up so part A and part B is one question, which means that 65.9% that got part A, 17% got part B. They had to get both parts correct in order to get the answer right. So at best, only 17% actually get this question right, even though 65.9% got part A right. And that, by the way, assumes that the 17% that got part B right actually got part A right. All right? So at best, 17% of students actually got this question right. So you need to look specifically at your part A's and part B's. Don't get too comfortable with your part A response rates. It actually rests also on your part B response rates. So you want to look carefully at those in ELA. And then look here at this particular one. Middle school was interesting. So we broke out our passage sets. This is just the 8th grade one that we're showing you. For ELA, because ELA is challenging, you have to consider a number of factors. It's not just the standard. It's not just each aspect of the standard. You also have to look at the passages. Are your students having an easier time with fiction as opposed to informational text? Are they struggling if it was a poem, which is pretty typical, right? Or if it's informational, if it's a higher complexity passage, are they struggling? Or it could be and, as the passages go further along, are they struggling more? Stamina is the problem, right? Is that the issue? So by the end of the test, your percentage correct is dropping. And then is it because the passages were harder and those standards were harder? Or is it just because they were tired? So if you were looking at some questions in here, 25 to 34, and you're like, oh, wow, these particular standards, the kids were struggling. Well, was it the standard, or is it just because those standards happened to be in that passage set, which happened to be the last passage set in the test? If you had moved that passage set to the beginning, would the kids still have not done well? And I don't know. But it's a question to ask. So those are all parts of the conversation you have to have, which is why it's really important to look at how students did previously. So over here with the 7th grade, we were having a conversation at a couple of the tables where we looked on the drag and drop. It was question number 3, where the question was, well, I don't know what if students were struggling with the drag and drop or if they're struggling with the standards. So what I did was I showed them the baseball card for their school, and we hit that standard and said, let's compare how the students did on that standard on the diagnostic to their performance on the FSQs and USAs, and we'll know. And it was pretty clear that on the diag, it was bright red, but on the FSQ and USAs, there were yellows and greens, which tells me, well, it's probably not a standards issue. It's probably drag and drop or something else. Not guaranteed. Maybe it's a text issue, maybe it's something else, but there's a disparity there that it's interesting to look at, right? Here's your question. If you are choosing not to use the FSQs and USAs, all good, your choice. But what else are you doing to assess? Because if you're not using it, then they'd go to that question, and that would be the only question they had. So then they couldn't answer that question. I don't know. Is it a standards issue? Is it a drag and drop issue? Is it a multi-select issue? Is it a text issue? And the answer would be, I don't know. So you want to look, if you're not using FSQs and USAs, what are you using? As long as you're using something to assess along the way. So mathematics, this is your grade 7 regular math, right? This is why I teach English right here, by the way. So grade 7 regular math, multi-select, 8% of our students scored it correct. I had to double check with the team. I'm like, no, I need an example where we actually taught the standard already. And they assured me this is one where the standard was already taught. So 8% of the students in our district scored this item correct. Now it's multi-select. A lot of our students were getting B correct. They just weren't going all the way through and selecting all the correct answers. So they could do the math. It was the multi-select part and working it all the way through. Which means you have to pare it down with your students. Was it the math? Like they can't even get it all the way down and solve it? They can't multiply -4 times the 3/5 x and multiply it out, be able to pare it down? Or is it the multi-select problem? Because 8% of the students in our district scored this correct, and this was an already taught standard. Or was it just they didn't keep going through all the answer choices? Or was it like me, they looked at all of those letters and numbers and said, forget it? Right? Which, quite frankly, might have been my answer, but... So you have to figure that out. Yeah, 7th grade regular. I'll just say that again. Regular. 7th grade regular. All right, Algebra 1. Let me tell you what we did with Algebra 1. And let me explain this and explain the why behind it. Even if you don't like my answer. I'll be honest. All right, algebra and geometry, and for those two tests. You have diagnostics. We gave you the links to the diagnostics. Algebra and geometry run on semester exams. They don't run on diagnostics. Okay, well, those semester exams are tied to grades, which are tied to GPAs, which are tied to Val and Sal. And if any of you have ever worked in the high school, you realize there is nothing so competitive in the world as going for Val and Sal. We have to keep those incredibly hidden and protected because they are tied to grades and tied to class rank, okay? So I am not printing those. We are not sending those out. Those are not mass copied and linking them everywhere. I can't. I mean, just because of the whole class rank Val-Sal issue. However, realizing that on the same hand, I'm saying, look at the value of delving into the test and breaking down the question and really analyzing it. What we've done is also given you just like questions for all of them. This question is just like this one that was on the midterm. So I can't actually give you the semester exam, but this question is just like it. All right? So we've given you questions that are just like it, so you can still analyze it and get right to the heart of the same problem. So this one, right, that I'm showing you is Algebra 1. It was just like the one that was on the midterm. And I'll show you where you can get to all the other ones that are just like the other midterm ones. And you can see here this particular one. 26.8% of our students in the district scored it correct. Right? It's item number 30. And here's where students scored it wrong. This wasn't a math error. At least that's our theory. Students looked at that graph and counted. They thought they went up a box and went over. And it's not to scale. They actually had to read the problem and do the math. They just counted. They assumed that the boxes were at scale. And it's not. So that is our theory as to what happened there. Grade 8 diagnostic, there's this one here. 13% of the students scored that one correct. If you look at the grade 8 diagnostic, the top 8 most commonly missed items, out of the top 8 most commonly missed items, only one of them is an 8th grade standard. The other 7 of them are 6th or 7th grade standards. In fact, only one of them is a 7th grade standard. The remaining 6 are 6th grade standards. Not shocking. This particular one, which only 13% of the students scored correct, is a low-level DOK2 question. It's not particularly challenging. It's a low DOK2. But it was taught the second semester of 6th grade. So students just have to remember it. I'm going to show you how you can help with some of that. So section 5. How do we actually reteach then from point of error? Because you can't start from the beginning and reteach everything. So how do we, now once we kind of figure out what the problem is, how do we reteach where we have that problem? Reteach from that point of error. Knowing that we need to do this in small groups because not all kids have the same problem. Doing it to that appropriate depth of knowledge. Reassessing for mastery. And showing kids some positive examples. So here's for literacy, one way you might kind of want to break it down with a particular standard. This is the same standard I showed you earlier. I kind of broke down all the different aspects you could teach it. So if I looked at unfolding of the plot, kind of figuring out, is a student having a problem with the type of text? And that's where I need to focus? And that's where I focus my reteaching? Or is the student having a problem finding evidence? Part A, Part B questions, is that where my issue is? That's where I need to focus my reteaching. Or is it about a character's response to change? Again, is it character's response to change with the type of text? Or is it character's response to change and being able to infer that? Because it's not going to be directly stated, so my problem is inferring the change. I have to hone in and then reteach directly to that particular skill area. For mathematics especially, I think your distractor analysis is where you go. Figure out where students are getting the answer wrong and why. So in this particular question, look at your question, why the student got it wrong. If the student picked A, it's because the student mistakes subtraction because of the negative m. That was his error. So then that's where you reteach it. So for that particular one, we actually hyperlinked, if your student struggled with this question, it was item number 5 in grade 7, only 20.8% of the students in our district got it right. We hyperlinked some lessons right there for you. That's where the student got it wrong. There's a lesson. You want to reteach that particular error because the student's thinking A is the correct answer. That's the mistake he's making. Fix that mistake. Don't reteach the entire standard. You do not have the time for that. Fix the error. If the student picked B, it's because he's using absolute value incorrectly. Fix the error. There's your lesson for that. For C, he used addition instead of subtraction. There's the lesson for that. You have to hone in on exactly where the mistake is. You can do the same thing for writing small group work. You want to focus in on either you want to work your rubric from left to right, PFO, and then EE. All right, you focus in PFO, then you focus in on EE. Sometimes you want to know what your students' scores were. Look at the scores from last year. They have them. It was on one of the reports that Mark showed you already. Or look at your Palm Beach performance reports. Again, it was on one of the earlier slides. Please note 3 on both PFO and 3 on EE is considered on grade level. A lot of times I'm hearing teachers saying they're going for the 4. 4 is lovely, 4 is fabulous, but 4 is just like a Marzano scale. It's above grade level. Okay? Which is great. If that's where a student's ready to go, that's fabulous. But I know for a lot of students when we're doing small group right now, it's just about getting them to grade level. That's a 3. 3 is grade level. And then as you've been hearing, it's all about hitting that depth of knowledge, the right depth of knowledge. If your questions in your reteaching that you're hearing in the classroom are a DOK 1, you're not going to hit it. So it's making sure it's at that right depth of knowledge. I know we've done a lot of work in this district with this. It's always good to keep bringing it back for teachers. Here's one slide for mathematics. You have the other grade levels that are hidden in the PowerPoint. So I'm just showing you the one, but the others are there that are hidden. Note how many of the standards are at level 2, and then you see how many are at level 3. You have no DOK 4 standards in math. You have a few DOK 1. And then look at grade 8 ELA. The standards are just written at a level 3. So when a teacher says, I'm teaching the standards, unless they're teaching it at a DOK 3, they're not teaching the standard. Just instructing on the standard, you got to teach it at a 3. And this is straight from CPOMS, the state's a listing of their standards, straight off the state website. So we have to make sure that that's where we're instructing. All right, so a lot of information. With a group at your table, if with a school person, or honestly even better, to get some insight from somebody not at your school, reflect on all the materials that we've shared so far today. What is some aha moment that you have had so far that you want to share? Take a couple of minutes and talk to people at your table. What's they?
They were in there in prior years. We revised them into the math. I just don't know if we got to fix it. We have to be able to delegate stuff, but I still should have known that. I mean, I should have raised a red flag. They were in there until Saturday, and then they will be back in there.
Why did you?
I don't know. And Arlene just came back over to me. Apparently, she wants us to do the SQUSA thing in June.
Yep.
Yes.
And then it's part 2 of the activity. Yeah.
Copies are made for. Okay.
So we had to stop. We stopped administering the 6th and 7th grade science diag and the 3rd and 4th grade science diagnostic. You know,
Yeah. We have them though. They're posted. I'm going to show them where they are. Well, the 6th and 7th grade one.
just having a conversation about we need to start like bringing some accountability for teaching the standards back. You know what I mean? And making that optional.
We have them though. We do still have them.
You say you have them there.
We have them posted in Unify. They're not diagnostics. We have them at the end of the year. So you can use them as end of the year tests.
I'm aware of those, but I'm thinking about even something at the same time we're doing diagnostics.
Yeah, we could do that.
Even just, I don't know.
Yeah, we could.
Splitting the end of the year to first semester, second semester, I don't know.
Is yellow mean they're predicted to be a level 3?
No, the only place the predictions would come in is here. That's percent correct, based on, threshold mastery. So is that, or what's that called?
Diagnostic, science diagnostic.
Sorry.
It's a science, grade 8 science diagnostic.
Yeah, that would just be percent correct
Okay,
with the color coding.
okay.
Yeah, and then state
Yeah,
science
it's something
achievement.
we did, yeah.
Yeah, if you want their diagnostic level,
No, yeah,
it's further down.
yeah. Because what we did was we created
It's
it.
just raw performance.
Okay.
That makes sense. Science. Yep.
Local assessment versus their science, that exact kid's science scores from 5th grade versus last year's ELA. So the concept is, and we already hyperlinked this baseball card report into their,
I saw it on the slide.
right. So if you look at some of your kids that maybe have yellows or whatever, but they're good readers and they did well last year, then, I mean, those are kids you kind of want to pick up and look at.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to kind of highlight some of those. Like, these are kids you want to pay attention to.
I was looking at that yesterday for Rolling Green. Kids they have that are 2s and 3s in the ELA that are 1s in science.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
an instruction issue.
Exactly. So that's it. So yeah. So those are some of the things I'm just going to talk to. So I just want to have it up and ready there.
Yep.
Because I thought it was a good report. It's hyperlinked right in. The team did it. I thought it was a great idea, and then they broke down what it is that they need to do, like what each column is. But the team put it together. I thought they did a really nice job with it.
All right. Is there anything? We're going to bring it back. No. EDW. All right. Is there an aha moment anyone would like to share that they had? All right, I'm not going to be able to handle all of those at the same time, so we're going to have to move on. All right, we'll move on. This is just going to show you resources. This is a particular section where we have a ton of hidden slides, so I really recommend that you go through the PowerPoint later, and we're just going to highlight a few for you, but like I said, a lot of hidden slides here. Most of these have direct hyperlinks on them. I'm going to give you, though, a hint. When there's a hyperlink to Blender, the first time you hit the link, you're going to hit the hyperlink, and it's going to take you to Blender's main page, and that does you no good. You're going to hit the link, it's going to take you to Blender's main page. As soon as it takes you to Blender's main page, wait for it to load, then I want you to close it. Then I want you to go back to the PowerPoint and hit the hyperlink again, and then from there on out, every time it will take you directly to the correct source in Blender. Just the first time you hit it, it has to log you into Blender. That's all that page was doing. So the very first time you hit it, it's going to just log you into Blender, and all it's going to do is take you to Blender's main page, and you're going to think that was useless. All right, that's fine. Let it log into Blender, then close the window, and then hit the link again, and from then on, all your other links will take you directly to the source you want. All right? And you just have to do that every time you do it. You look at the PowerPoint from a new computer, because all it has to do is log you onto Blender. All right? All right, here we go. These are your middle school winter diagnostics for ELA. You have standards resources for every standard in ELA there on the right. that you want, I need to reteach some aspect of this standard right here, here's a Google folder that gives me exact reteaching for this standard, one standard right here. This is what I need. The hyperlink on the right-hand side gets you right to that. So that's what you want to hit if that's what you need there. You have some additional resources from Achieve the Core. It takes you to an exterior site, but again, since we're still using our Common Core standards for another year and a half, you can go right there for those. Here gives you a lot more test standards and items addressed prior to the standard, so a lot more practice you have right there. All of those are direct hyperlinks. You have more like this on hidden slides for ELA. Here are some PD opportunities that are videos. These are hyperlinks to the exact videos. So if you don't know how to use them, you have tutorials that are already there for your students using HMH. So if you need a quick tutorial on any of the grammar standards, there are quick videos on those. So you don't have to have anyone teaching them. If you have a couple of kids that are struggling, you can have them on computers with headphones and just do a quick video on how to do that particular grammar standard. How to use those tutorials, video on how to actually access those right there, quick video. How to use teen engagement right there. Teen engagement, I hear sometimes from administrators, it's too low level. Teen engagement actually comes in 3 reading levels. It comes in a low level, an on grade level, and an above grade level. So I wonder sometimes if you're thinking it's low level, it's because you're only seeing printed out the low level version. There is a low level version, an on grade level version, and an above grade level version. Teachers have access to all 3. So if what you're seeing is low level, it just might be because it's only the low level version being printed out. You want to make sure you get any of them. Okay? Teachers have access to all 3 versions. And then you have all of those. PD on demand, this link takes you directly to the listing of all of the PD opportunities, including writing PD, that's all available on video. So that way you don't have to send your teachers anywhere, you don't have to arrange anything, anything is available on video. This is 1 page, but there are actually 3 pages worth. This is just a teaser, the other 2 pages are hidden. This is a link to your standards. You click on that, it gives you a baseball card showing how your students did on that standard on the Diagnostic compared to their performance on the FSQs and USAs on that same standard. So if you click that link, it's already swatched for you. It gets you right to your students' individual performance. So you just have to click on that. If it says, like here, it means it was not assessed. We didn't assess it prior to the Diagnostic. So you have no comparison data. And that's on the language standards. For your ELL students, if you have Achieve 3000 for your ELL students, that's how you access that particular one. There are more specific examples on your hidden slides, but it's there. And then you have direct links to videos and resources for ELL students here on how you can access picture cards, sentence frames, some instructional pieces, a video on how they can get into complex text. All of these resources are available, all directly linked. All right, for math, complex tasks. Remember, you want to hit those higher DOK levels in math. Here's a direct link of where you can get them by grade level, all directly linked for you. Interesting piece, by the way, is that middle standard. I know when you first look at that one slide that showed you how many standards are actually in the DOK2 range, but an interesting quotation straight out of the test item specifications in math. It says right there, and I'm an English teacher, right? Citations, page 9 of the mathematics test item specifications. 50% or more of the assessment items associated with the given standard should meet or exceed the DOK level of the standard, which means the question on the test is at minimum what the DOK level is or exceed it. So just because it's written at a 2 doesn't mean they won't ask it at a level of a 3. More resources that are all here, all hyperlinked. These, why did Missy mess up? For Algebra I and Geometry. Though those links take you directly to the pages with the like questions for algebra and geometry. All right? So not only do they have all the like questions, but they have all the reteaching resources. For my students all messed up question number 1 on the algebra midterm, but I can't get to the algebra midterm to figure out what question number 1 was. Get to that page right there. It's hyperlinked. It gives you a like question for question 1 plus all the reteaching resources for it. And then geometry there too. Okay? Direct link. Algebra and geometry. And there you have the same baseball card links right there. And then more resources, all hyperlinked. Science. I just want to show you here again, you have all of your diagnostics. Look at this here. Just to freak you out a little more, especially my science people over there in the back, I want you to realize something. I told you earlier, 94 standards are able to be tested on the science test. Obviously, there are not 94 questions on our district diagnostic, which means our district diagnostic does not cover all of the standards that are possibly able to be tested on the state test, because there aren't 94 questions. We do our best approximation. So here is what we actually assessed. Out of the grade 6 benchmarks, we assessed 11 of the possible 27. On grade 7, we did 13 of the possible 33. And of grade 8, we did 13 of the possible 34. We would have been happy to assess all 94, but your kids would have been there testing all day. Not a good idea either, right? But my point is, realize that there's a whole lot we didn't assess. Your choice about whether or not to use the NGSQs and the USAs for science. But if you're not, and knowing that the diagnostic only assessed roughly half, not doing the math, but I'm probably close, roughly half of the standards, how are you assessing mastery of all the others? Now, here's an interesting piece that I want to show you that the team put together. If you click that hyperlink at the top, it's a baseball card. It will take you to your exact data. Here's what all the columns mean. This is an amazing tool I think the team put together for you. Again, the concept out there that the science test is a reading test, which does not work in actual practice. Besides the fact that obviously kids have to read. If you have a non-reader, the kid's not going to do well on any test, obviously. But if a kid reads, it doesn't mean they know science. So here's what that baseball card does. Column 1 is the winter diagnostic sorted from low to high. All of this is already done for you. You click that link, this is what you get for your kids. Column 2 is their cumulative performance on all the grade 8 NGSQs and USAs. If your students haven't taken any, then it's blank. Grade 3 is how your students did on their grade 5 science or SSA. Column 4 is how they did on their ELA test last year. Then 5, 7, 9, and 11 is on their science diagnostic by reporting category. And 6, 8, 10, and 12 is on their local assessments by reporting category. So let me show you what that particular assessment or report looks like, and then the power of that particular report. So what I can look at here, I can look at my science diagnostic here. I'm in the first column. I'll use the mouse for the people that can't see me at the side. So here you go. I have my science diagnostic here. So I have students that did in the yellow, not horrible, right? But over here in this column, I have how they did on the science test in 5th grade. So these kids, for example, scored level 5 on their science SSA when they were in grade 5. Here is what they were doing on the grade 8 diagnostic. Here was their 8th grade score, was their reading score last year in 7th grade. Probably should have done better. All right, they're missing some content. Here, this one, I have a kid that, look at this child's science diagnostic from this year to his performance on this year's NGSQs and USAs. Look at his SSA score from 5th grade, and look at his ELA score from last year. Not a strong reader, but no science. You can pick him up on science. Same thing here. All of those, the team already swatched out. It's already done for you. You click that, you get to your individual students. Go in and figure out, when you're doing your small groups, who do you need to pull? That work's already done for you. Okay, all you got to do is hit that link. All right, and again, so you have some more resources right there, all hyperlinked for you for science. And I know I lost everybody in that report at this point. For civics, I know we didn't spend a lot of time on civics. You just have 2 slides right there for you. Those are the questions. Civics, I'm going to tell you, is just straight content. Kids just need to know the information. Straight memorization of content. Straight up memorization of content. Know the facts. They're the most commonly missed questions. And right here, if they hit this link, that's the most important link. For those of you that were talking to me about where's the civics area, that's where I'm missing. That link, that top link is what you want. You click that link, it gives you a direct link to, if your students miss question 1 on the diag, here is their point of error, here are the reteaching resources you need for it. If students miss question 2, here's their error, here is what they need. Because for civics, it's not as complex as the other areas. There's no delving deep, there's no analyzing standard, it's written very simply. All right, it's already broken down for you, it's already done, the chart looks like it looks like on the right. You have all of the resources there just based on what they missed. There's how you can reteach it. And then you have more resources by unit on the bottom. But if you want reteaching at point of error, you want that top link. Like I said, there was a ton of stuff I didn't even show you, all hidden. But you have access to that. Okay, a couple of questions we want you to look at. You have that activity you did, the first page of it, that white paper. Flip it to the second page, please. The white paper that you were working on with the test, if you can flip that to the second page, please. Just flip it over. Three questions. You can jot them down. You can just talk about them with the people at your table. Now that you have all of this information and you talk to people, you really thought it through, as a leader, what are some changes, some tweaks, some modifications that you're going to make as a result of this information? What are some changes or tweaks that you will want your teachers to make as a result of the information you're going to share? And then what are some changes or tweaks that you expect your students to make as a result of this information? Have that discussion with the people at your table.
Okay, I'll just get one. Okay, can I have your attention, please? I think we were scheduled till 11:30, so we're gonna be able to get you out of here early today. Get back on your campus. So in that process, definitely heard you guys planning and having conversations about going back. Would anybody like to share out their learning from today or something that they plan to implement when they go back? We have microphones. Anybody want to share out? See, you guys are competing against each other.
We have one.
Oh, we do. Somebody's going to where at?
Back in the science corner.
Back in the science corner. Down here? Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Just wanted to share, our table was discussing just how impactful the slide that Diana initially showed us on the science standards, just how the students are tested, 6th grade, 7th grade, into the 8th grade. So that slide was just very impactful, and we were discussing what conversations we're going to take back to our science teachers to see how we can embed those standards into the 8th grade curriculum.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yep, okay.
Hi there. Well, I've already started sending some of these slides to the teachers, so I just want to say thanks for doing the heavy lifting and all those links and everything, because that's sometimes a real barrier that they don't, it's another task that they have to figure out. Where am I going to find this? So I'm sending all these slides to each individual department so that they can use this information.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
A huge shout out to our teams, because I am not going to pretend that I sat there.
Yes, Adam?
And if I can make a quick announcement, we really appreciate you guys borrowing the Chromebooks if you did, please give them back before you leave. We did have someone we did take your social security number, just so you know. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to bring us back to this slide, and I want to make just a couple of points in closing. All right? In your mind right now as you reflect, I hope that you can see where the activity and what we did today threads across systems, culture, and instruction. Do you see that? It's not isolated, but it's important that sometimes we take some of these important tasks, right, and we kind of break them down. And here's the other point that I want to make, and I had a conversation with somebody in the room earlier. We've built a lot of capacity around data, around reporting, around assessment analysis. But sometimes that can be overwhelming. Do you agree? Yeah. So what is important is really being able to distinguish, right, through this type of analysis and this kind of protocol, how to target and get specific so you get the results for the effort, right? Because no doubt there's a lot of time and effort being spent on this, but you want to get the return on investment, okay? So thank you so much. You guys have been great. If you have any questions, reach out, call any member of the team. Thank you and have a great day. what? I mean, do we want? I didn't do a slide like that. I do that so they want to break out into another. Did you? That's why there's no slide. Okay. Yeah, that's why they do it. Yeah. They don't have the actual test to break down. I can't see the item. Good job.
Right back at you, partner.
Huh?